think it's about time I started some basing. How's it going, guys? My name is Matt, this is my beard, the fork mic is back, and in this week's video we're going to start basing. So this is a test base that I'm going to be doing today, just to get an idea of the general composition as to what the rest of the bases are going to look like for my Dark Angels. But first, a bit of context. Basing is actually my favourite part about this hobby. It frames the miniature so well, you can really bring some personality to the board through wave basing. It's kind of like you're a miniature gardener in a sense, and it's really, really cool. So let's have a look at what we're going to be working with today. So I've decided just to I picked a random model, so I picked a knight, and we're going to be adorning him to the base. And the first thing we really need to work out is base positioning. This is something that's generally done just on a whim, but I've not actually glued any of these models to their bases. What I've done is I've kept them off, and each one I'm going to position on the base so I can actually make the most of the real estate of that base. So let's have a look at this knight. Now, his position, he's stood. So he's stood, legs shoulder width apart. However, he's got a lot of front area that we can work with. So the chances are, for the positioning side of things, I'm going to push the model further back on the base. So let's have a look at that. So first and foremost, as you can see, I'm just gluing the base. I'm gluing the model to the base, and I'm actually positioning the model to the back of the base itself, giving me quite a lot of purchase around the front so I can actually adhere some detail work. Now, sometimes it's good to keep the model off the base for this, and sometimes it's better to put the model on, and that's why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. And again, this is just a test model, however, it is what it is. It's exactly as I'm trying to purvey here. I'm trying to show you guys the decisions as I make them. So the first thing you see, obviously, it's now glued. Now, following on from that, we move on to the actual composition of the base itself. So let's jump to the tabletop and I'll show you what I mean by that. So here we have our Deathwing Knight, and as you can see, it has been glued to the base. So initially, when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the areas of real estate. We have this area here, which I'm just going to lightly mark off. And then we also have an area at the back as well, so just between his back legs. Now, one thing that works against us is this tabard in the middle, but that's fine, we can work with that. Now, when I am looking at the composition of the base, I'm going to be drawing inspiration from a base that I've already done for my first chaplain. Now, this is the small conversion that I did, where I green stuffed the shield to the back of the chaplain. And I did this just on a Discord call with a few of my friends, and you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Now, something that I'm not going to be adding to this base, and probably not for a few other bases either, is this bit here. This was a bit of basing material, which I think it was from a Tyranid kit. Obviously I don't have those in abundance, so therefore I'm just going to leave it as is. But we move. So what can you see here? Well, I think the first thing really to sort of look at is the base compound. Now, the base compound itself, it's AK's concrete. I've started off with a concrete base because it gives a little bit more texture, it doesn't crackle, and it just gives a good foundation as to what we can expect with this kind of base. It's a very fine grit texture as well, so it's thematic and it kind of is in keeping with the scale of the mini. And then you can see a few bits and bobs on top. Now, these are Element Games basing sand, and it's in 2 different sizes. I've very sparsely added a couple of the larger pieces from the larger sanding box, and then also I've just done a very light sprinkling of the fine grit sand. Now this is very fine grit sand, as you can see, but just those little bits of additional texture really push the model a long way, and I think for this particular build, or for this particular base, that's what I'm going to look for, that sparsity. Now we can see at the back here, same situation. I've just sprinkled a small amount of the sand on top of the concrete, and it's going to give a really nice overall finish and overall effect. Now, your mileage may vary if you're looking to thematically base your models to a specific planet or a specific setting, then this is where you would really kind of go to town. Now, my whole idea is that this is meant to be an urban sort of rubble-scape, an urban landscape, so I will be getting a few basing bits going forward, not in this particular video. This is just a test for the basing sort of style, but I'll be getting some basing bits, possibly resin printed, or maybe making them myself with styrene. Now let's have a look at this base here. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to start off by adding in some concrete paste around the feet, keeping it very thin, and then as it's starting to dry, I'm going to start adding a few small sprinkles of that sand. Now again, this is a really simple basic tutorial or basic guide as to what my decisions are going to look like. However, it kind of sets the foundation for everything else, and it gives you guys an idea as to what to sort of expect with these bases, because when these are fully done up, they look amazing. So let's jump onto some concrete, and I shall put it on now. I'm really quite happy with how it's turning out. So as you can see, the base itself is coming along nicely. All I've done is I've added the AK Interactive Terrain Concrete. I've then gone on with a very light sprinkling of the Fine Grit by Element Essentials, and then I've moved on to a little bit of basing gravel, which I actually tweezed on. So I actually tweezed those on individually and just placed them as I saw fit. And as you can see, the effect is quite interesting because it basically gives a variance in the basing material or the actual ground surrounding the model, and that helps kind of bring a bit more focus to the model itself and the actual details within, because again, as far as I'm concerned, bases help to frame the model, so that's where we're at. Now, this is all I can do for this step. I've got to wait for this to dry. Once it's dry, I'm going to give it a base coat in black, and we're actually going to paint this base up to full completion. So just to give you guys a full indication as to what to expect and what we can actually achieve here. And there is one thing I'm going to add to this. I am actually testing out a new product, for me anyway, which is the Gamer Grass starter box from, well, the green grass tuft box from Gamer's Grass. And the reason why I've bought this one specifically is because it has the different tuft styles and sizes. Now, I'm used to using tufts, that's not the problem here. I just think for value for money wise, I think this was like £20, and what you're getting is you're getting the 4 tuft, the actual tweezers that you use, the PVA glue, obviously I've got plenty of that, and that's pretty decent because we know that these 4 tuft styles meld together, and as you can see on the box art there, you can really achieve some cool stuff with this stuff. So, without further ado, I'm going to now click my fingers, and when I do, this model is going to be black, and the table all cleaned up, and it'll be all magic. So 3, 2, 1. Well, one horrendous transition later, we have a undercoated mini. Now, before I go any further with the actual basing side of things, I have undercoated this black, and that's for a good reason. I want to keep a darker sort of tone with my Deathwing. So rather than doing a undercoat of the we get bone from Colourforge. I'm going to keep it black, and I'm going to build up with my bone colours for the actual armour. So this is where we're at. Now, as you can see with black, it's really brought out a nice little bit of detail on the base. You can see that the fine grit side of things and the sparsity of my the sparsity of the sand distribution has really lended itself nicely to that effect, because it in a scale perspective, it doesn't look out of place. Now, something you can find with when you're basing is if you overcrowd the base with higher textures, it kind of makes it not feel as true to reality as I'm trying to convey, or you're trying to convey. So I'm quite happy with this. So I think from now I'm going to clean up the table. I didn't do that in my magical transition, which is absolutely abhorrent, and I'm never going to do that again. And I think I'm going to start painting the base. So to do that, I'm going to start off with a base colour of Gawthor Brown. And once I've gone through the Gawthor Brown, I'm going to then look at other colour distribution and see what I can do to make this base pop. So let's jump into it. And there we have a finished base. Now, in the grand scheme of things, this base is really simple. The only complex bit, or the only additional bit to a normal sort of standard base, would be the concrete at the bottom. And I appreciate that this video has kind of been a little bit choppy. I'm trying to still figure out a few things for my Dark Angels, and I'm keen to progress with them, don't get me wrong, but because I've kind of got this big sort of grandiose vision in my mind, I think I'm getting a little bit of decision paralysis when it comes to this. And that's one of the reasons why test models are so important, and why testing out ideas is so important. Now, I really like this base, it's really simple, but there's ideas that I've got to create sort of little rock formations and little broken off bits of like girders and broken rubble and scenic bits that I would like to add into it, and that will give a really broader picture as to the environment in which my Dark Angels are going to be in. So I think there's still a little bit of room for development here, and I think there's still quite a lot that I need to figure out before I start cracking on with my full army. So I think something I'm going to say here and now is that this probably isn't going to be a short-term win. I think this is going to be a longer-term game to play. I mentioned the Gamer's Grass Green Tuft starter set in this video, and I've decided against placing any tufts on the base, because then that makes it a little bit harder to access sort of the lower areas based on where I would like to put one or two of the tufts. And then also I've discovered moss as well, and moss is a lot shorter to the height of the base, or how can I explain it? Tufts are quite tall on a base, and it doesn't just look like standardized grass, it looks quite tall in comparison, more like sort of half a shrub. And so I think I'm going to have a little look into what I can get when it comes to moss and take it from there. Maybe add one or two tufts here and there just sort of to break it up a little bit, but I think moss might be the way to go on this one. So there's still some decisions I need to make here, and I think this is the kind of conclusion I've come to with this whole process, and I'm happy about that. That's a good thing, because this hobby is all about learning and developing and figuring things out as you go. So I think for now, I think that's where I'm going to leave the base sort of conundrum, and I need to think about it a bit more, and I need to have a little look online for some products potentially, and maybe look at moss. I think that's probably going to be my next thing, and maybe some resin printed stuff, so some resin printed girders and steel rebar and that sort of thing. So there we have it. So on that note, guys, thank you very much for watching. I know it's been a bit of a weird sort of tangential sort of journey, but this is what it's all about. I don't have a fixed plan just yet, and that's one of the reasons kind of why I wanted to make this video in the first place, because I wanted to just test out my sort of palette when it came to the base and see how it looked, but then see what I wanted to develop and add. I mean, just a quick side note, I know we're kind of closing off now, but even, you know, green stuff or milliput, making like larger platform areas for the models to stand on and having different height variations throughout the entirety of the, you know, the army would be pretty cool. So there's that idea. But anyway, I could go down a massive rabbit hole here. So on that note, thank you very much for watching, guys. I really do appreciate it. And if you're new around here and you haven't done so already, feel free to subscribe. You'll be along for a journey when it comes to my my Dark Angels or my Deathwing. I'll be posting something next week. I'm not quite sure whether I want to continue down the Dark Angels for now or whether I want to just have a little sort of thought break whilst I work out what I want to do. But I've got a couple of cool ideas in mind for what's coming next. If you've liked the video, please, you know, feel free to like. This has effectively been a really basic beginner's tutorial for basing, but it's also been a development video for me, so that's pretty cool. Separate to everything, I have created a second channel for my Gundam. I thought it would be better to separate the two things, obviously the painting and the building and the basing and that sort of thing for Warhammer and wargaming. Keep that separate to Gunpla. Gunpla's a very different hobby, and I didn't want to sort of confuse yourselves with, well, hang on, he was doing Dark Angels last week and now he's making a Gundam kit. Like, what does that mean? It doesn't make any sense. So please feel free to jump over to that channel and subscribe. There's going to be a video coming out quite soon. It might actually be today, I'm not 100% sure. I'm releasing this video on Friday, and I think I'm going to be releasing my first sort of introduction, hello, I'm Matt kind of thing on the Relentless Gunpla channel. So as I've said, the name of that channel is Relentless Gunpla. Feel free to jump over and give that a subscribe if you want to sort of follow my exploration of Gundam. I'm really looking forward to sharing that with the world. But for the here and now, thanks very much for watching. I'm going to pop a link on screen now for my test model video, which was all surrounding the Dark Angels. So feel free to have a watch of that. It's quite an interesting sort of journey, very similar to this one in that I'm feeling my feet and trying to work out where I'm going with my Dark Angels, because I don't know why, but I've kind of made it a bit more complex in my head. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, guys. I've been Matt, this has been my beard, and have a good day.